The hospital corridor was quiet that afternoon, with sunlight streaming through the tall windows. Sarah Mitchell walked slowly down the hallway, her nurse's shoes making soft sounds on the polished floor. She had been working at City General for 15 years now, and she knew every corner of this place. She noticed a man sitting on one of the benches near the pediatric wing. He wore an expensive gray suit, but his shoulders were slumped forward. A small boy, maybe 4 years old, sat beside him in a light blue shirt. The child was pointing down the hallway, his eyes wide with curiosity. Sarah recognized that look on the man's face. She had seen it before many times. It was the look of someone carrying more weight than they could bear. She walked over and sat down on the bench across from them. "Excuse me," she said gently. "I'm Sarah, one of the nurses here. Is everything all right?" The man looked up. He had kind eyes, though they were tired. "I'm James," he said. "James Cooper. This is my son, Michael." He paused, and Sarah could see him struggling with his words. "We're here for test results. Michael's been having some health issues, and I don't know what I'll do if—" His voice trailed off. Little Michael looked up at his father and squeezed his hand. Sarah understood immediately. She had seen so many worried parents over the years. "Would you like me to sit with you while you wait?" she asked. James looked surprised. "You don't have to do that. I'm sure you're busy." "I have a few minutes," Sarah said with a warm smile. "Sometimes waiting is the hardest part." For the next 20 minutes, Sarah sat with them. She told Michael a story about a brave little knight who was afraid of nothing. She talked to James about simple things, everyday things, just to help take his mind off the waiting. She learned that he ran a company downtown, that his wife had passed away 2 years ago, and that Michael was his whole world. When the doctor finally came out, Sarah stood up to give them privacy. But she squeezed James's shoulder first. "Whatever the news is," she said quietly, "you're not alone. The test results were good. Michael would be fine with some medication and monitoring." When James came out of the doctor's office, his eyes were wet with relief. He looked for Sarah, but she had already returned to her duties on another floor. 10 years passed. Sarah was 58 now, and she still worked at City General. Her blonde hair had more silver in it, and her face showed the gentle lines of someone who had spent a lifetime caring for others. She had never married, never had children of her own. The hospital had been her life, and her patients had been her family. One evening, she was called into the hospital director's office. Her heart sank. She had heard the rumors about budget cuts, about layoffs. At her age, she knew she would be one of the first to go. The director looked uncomfortable. "Sarah, you've been an exceptional nurse, but with the new hospital management taking over, they're restructuring everything. I'm afraid—" "I'm so sorry, but we're going to have to let you go." Sarah sat very still. She had given this hospital 15 years of her life. She had held hands with dying patients, celebrated with new mothers, comforted frightened children. And now, just like that, it was over. "I understand," she said quietly, though her heart was breaking. She cleaned out her locker that night. As she walked out of the hospital for the last time, she wondered what she would do now. She had some savings, but not much. At her age, finding another nursing position would be difficult. 2 weeks later, there was a knock on her apartment door. When she opened it, she saw a man in an expensive suit. It took her a moment to recognize him. "James?" she said, surprised. "Hello, Sarah," he said with a gentle smile. "May I come in?" She invited him inside, confused. "How did you find me?" she asked. "I've been looking for you for 10 years, he said, "ever since that day at the hospital. You sat with us when I was at my lowest point. You showed us kindness when we needed it most. I never forgot that." Sarah shook her head. "I was just doing my job." "No," James said firmly. "You did more than your job. You saw 2 frightened people and you took the time to care. That's not something you forget." He told her that he had built his company into one of the most successful in the city. He had recently acquired the management group that now controlled City General Hospital. When he learned about the layoffs, he had reviewed every name personally. And there it was. "Sarah Mitchell, I want to offer you a position," James said, "as the director of patient care at a new healthcare facility I'm opening." Better hours, better pay, and you'll have the resources to train a whole new generation of nurses to care for patients the way you cared for us. Sarah felt tears welling up in her eyes. James, I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, he replied. You saved me once, Sarah. On that bench when I was about to fall apart, you gave me strength. Now it's my turn to protect you, to make sure someone as kind as you never has to worry again. Michael, now 14 years old, was waiting in the hallway. He poked his head in. Is this her dad? The lady who told me the story about the night? Sarah laughed through her tears. You remember that? I never forgot, Michael said. Dad told me that story every night after that day. He said you taught us that the bravest thing you can do is be kind when things are hard. Sarah looked at James, this man who had remembered a simple act of compassion for 10 years. She thought about how we never really know how our small kindnesses ripple out into the world, how a moment of care can change everything. I accept, she said softly. Thank you, James. Thank you for remembering. Thank you for teaching me what really matters, James replied. Success, money, achievements, they're all fine. But kindness, that's what saves us. That's what makes us human. And so Sarah began a new chapter in her life, not as someone who was cast aside, but as someone who was valued and protected. All because years ago, she had taken a few minutes to sit with a frightened father and his small son in a hospital hallway. Sometimes, she thought, the most important thing we do is simply be present for another person. And sometimes, though we may not know it at the time, that presence echoes through the years, coming back to us when we need it most.